everybody. This is Steffen.
This is Dad.
This is Duke. And this is Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Today, we're back out in the shop, and we're finally going to get back to work on Steffen's mud mower. Last episode, we took all the unnecessary weight out of this thing. The deck, the safety switches, all kinds of brackets, all of it. This week, we're going to start building this thing back up. We're going to start with putting a new front axle in this thing out of a 216 John Deere with 1-inch spindles. So we're going to get right into it, but first, a word from our sponsors. All right, we're back. Now this is the donor tractor. It's a 1983 John Deere 216. We've already picked a bunch of parts off this thing, including the transmission for my tractor. But what we're after this time is this front axle. So we're going to go ahead, we already got it rigged up. We're going to connect this to the hoist. We're going to jack it up, and we're going to get that front axle out from underneath this thing.
First, we're going to go ahead and take off the hood. Next, we're going to go ahead and jack it up.
Fine. I think that's good.
Okay.
All right, now that it's all jacked up, we have access to this thing. We're going to go ahead and pull off the front tires, the wheels. We're going to go ahead and take the tie rods off and then drop the axle itself. All right, we're going to go ahead and pull off the tie rods. Here, grab that one right there. All right. Next, we got to take out the axle itself. There's a bolt and a flange here, some kind of bearing system. Alright, that's out. It looks like on this axle, there's a C-clip on the front here that we have to get off. And I've already removed a bolt. This little bolt is a 1/2 inch head, probably 5/16 thread out of this flange. And this looks like it's welded here to this pin. So there's a pin that goes through the axle. This little bolt holds the flange on the back so it can't rotate. And then the C-clip holds the whole assembly in on the front side. We're gonna go ahead and pull that C-clip and it should just slide out the back. We took a rag and we cleaned off all the grease that was caked on here, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and use this screwdriver, pry off this E-clip or C-clip, whatever it's called. And now this whole thing should just come out the back. So Presley, turn the wheel all the way. There it is. Just like that, guys. There's the pin, there's the axle. Let's take it over to the bench and let's compare that axle to the John Deere axle and see the differences. We've got both axles up here on the bench to do a comparison. This here is the John Deere axle. This here is the wheel horse axle. So first impressions, the Deere axle is definitely wider. So from outside to outside on the spindles, we've got about 35 3/8 or 35 1/2 inches. On the wheel horse, outside to outside, we're looking at about 32 inches, maybe 32 1/8. I also noticed right away that the wheel horse pin and the John Deere bolt are the same thickness. So the wheel horse pin, obviously, and it fits in the John Deere. The other major differences besides the track width is the spindle thickness. So on the wheel horse, I think the main reason we're doing this is because of these 3/4 inch spindles. Now they're just fine if you're gonna run around your property and cut your grass and pull trailers. But if you're taking this thing off-roading and you're gonna be running over obstacles, these John Deere spindles are way beefier. These are 1 inch and they are a lot shorter. There's a shorter distance between where it's supported by the axle and where it turns to go to the rim and the bearing system. So these are a lot more stout. This whole thing's wider and it's swept. If you see, it's swept back on the John Deere. We're gonna go ahead and flip it around on the wheel horse and flip it forward. Let's go ahead and get this installed underneath the wheel horse and see what we have to do next to support it. All right, so with the axle installed, you see that there's a space between the rear support for the axle and the axle itself. This axle is thinner front to back than the wheel horse was. It looks like we've got about 3/4 of an inch, but we probably don't want to make it that tight. We're gonna get a spacer or some washers to fill that gap up. It so happens that we've got a tote full of spare parts from when I built my tractor. So to fill that space behind the axle, we're gonna go ahead and use a 3/4 inch shaft collar, which happens to be 5/8 of an inch in thickness. And then we've got this pack of 3/4 inch machine bushings. We're gonna put one in front of the axle and maybe one behind it. And that way it'll shim it up nice, maybe leave a little bit of play, and then we're gonna go on from there. So the axle's installed. It feels really good. It's got all kinds of clearance. It's not rubbing on anything. It has a lot more travel left and right than it used to. But what we used was a 3/4 inch shaft collar right there. There's a machine bushing between the shaft collar and the axle. And there's another machine bushing between the front frame, this frame clip right here, and the axle itself. There still is a little bit, maybe a 1/16 to maybe about an 1/8 inch of play, as you can see there. But that'll give us play for when we put our rods to hold this thing stable, which we're gonna start looking at next. The next thing we need to do is figure out how we're gonna support the axle from being able to rock side to side, and also how we're gonna connect new tie rods from the steering mechanism to these spindles out here. Now, one of the things we need to do off the bat is take out the C-clips, the E-clips, or whatever, these snap rings off these spindles, and we need to switch them. We need to put this one on that side since we rotated this axle around 180 degrees. Steffen's gonna go ahead and pop off these snap rings so we can switch the spindles. This spindle just came off that side. We're gonna go ahead and put it right back in this side for test fitting. And these snap ring pliers here are made by Channel Lock. I had a pair of Harbor Freight ones in the past, and the Channel Lock ones are immensely better. Now that we got the spindles flipped around, I'm going to go ahead, and we bought these from eBay. These are tie rods that went to some Yamaha ATV or UTV. I'll go ahead and put a picture of it on the screen and a link in the description. But just preliminary to see if they work. This bolt, I'm not sure what size this is. It's probably a metric, but it fits really well in the John Deere spindle with the castle nut. So it fits in there pretty well, and just by eyeballing it, it looks like it'll just clear. It'll hook up to that steering arm right there, but this stud doesn't fit through the hole. We're gonna have to drill that out bigger. So it looks like the diameter of these tie rod end studs are 11.6 millimeter. And we're gonna go ahead and switch it though to inches. And that would be a 15/32, so almost just under ½ inch. And we need to know this because we need to drill out right here where the where the tie rod connects to the steering mechanism. And that hole that's drilled through there already is really close to the edge of this. So I hope that doesn't become an issue when we do drill it out. I happen to have a 15/32 drill bit and a drill bit set. I'm gonna go ahead and send it. Can't make this stuff up, guys. As you just saw, that drill bit snapped. I probably was limp wristing the drill, and it just, as soon as it started to cut through the metal and started to pass through that hole, the whole thing tweaked and it snapped. Look how sharp that broke off right there. I can't say I've never seen a drill bit snap like that before, because I have, but this is a pretty large drill bit to just snap so easy. Anyway, happen to have a whole another 15/32 from another kit. Let's go ahead and finish this thing out. Let's not make this 2 for 2. All right, we're through on one, and it did not go through the edge. There's still quite a bit of material underneath that, so that's a good thing. Ready? Let's do the other one. Nice. Now let's see. It's not wanting to go all the way down over that skirt. We may have to come in from this side with a step bit or something and just make a little space for that little step up on the skirt there. Quick update. So on these tie rods, we were not able to use the tie rod end that came on it over here on the steering arm, because as it moved left and right, the tie rod just doesn't clear past where the pin goes through and the frame piece in front of it. So what we did was, I happened to have bought left and right hand thread Heim end joints, and what we're going to do is put a ½ inch bolt, and they are ½ inch. They're threaded ½ inch 20, and they're left and right hand. We're going to put a ½ inch bolt through it. I already drilled that hole. I stepped it up to ½ inch. We're going to put a lock washer in between the Heim and the steering arm, because without that lock washer in there to space it out, it hits. And then I need the nut. And once we tighten this up, it compresses the lock washer. Potentially it locks everything into place by having that pressure in between it. And it gives us space so the Heim joint can move freely. And now, wrong way. Where's the castle nut?
Here, but you have it on the wrong way. It's supposed to be the other one.
Oh. I was trying to put the tie rod end on from the wrong end. But now that I have it like the other side, now we're linked back up to the steering. We got full lock left and right. It looks like these tie rod ends need to be shorter. I think that's as short as they get.
No, they're all the way, I think they're all the way lengthened.
No, they're not.
Oh.
We got the tie rods mocked up, and I was really hoping it would just work, but that's not the case, as usual. So, the first issue we're having is that the tie rods are just a little bit too long. We have extreme toe in, and also another issue we're having is when I turn the steering all the way from each way, the tie rods hit these bumpers on the axle where they used to ride against the stop plate on the John Deere. So it's preventing us from turning all the way, and it happens on both sides. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut some steel, and we're going to extend out the steering arms on these spindles. I don't know how far yet, but we're gonna extend those out, and we're gonna weld them to the existing. Something else we're gonna do is we're gonna end up chopping these tie rods, either chopping the tie rods and putting a rod coupling on here and making them shorter and just welding around the coupling, or when we put these new flanges on the spindles, maybe we can drill the new hole out a little further. So that'll prevent us from having to cut these. We'll see, but that's where we're at. We're gonna go ahead and get into it, and we'll be back shortly. So we're gonna go ahead and start by extending these spindle flanges, steering arms, whatever they're called. We went out to the shop, we found a nice piece of steel that's the same thickness as these flanges are. It's about 5/16. And we're gonna go ahead and bolt that right through there. And then what we're gonna do is take a Sharpie or something, and we're gonna mark just outside of this whole thing. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna mark out just outside. We're gonna use a straight edge, but just so you get the picture, we're gonna go ahead and just extend these out. This isn't what we're gonna do exactly. I'm just trying to show how we're gonna try to solve this problem. And what we'll do is we'll have this piece of plate sticking out just proud of the edge of that flange so we have something to weld. We're gonna weld it. We're gonna leave it all the way underneath there so it gives it double thickness. We're gonna weld it here, all the way around the front. Maybe we'll stitch weld it instead of welding it all the way. Probably just leave that bolt in it just for extra strength. And then it'll come out here just like you see, and it'll extend out. And we'll put a new hole out here somewhere. All right, so we got this thing, we're mocking it up still. Here's what we come up with. That's in the center. To my eye, the spindle looks like it's pretty straight, like where it would have to be. The tie rods are definitely gonna have to get cut. And we're gonna put a rod coupling somewhere in here, make it shorter, because it's way too long, first of all. Second of all, now we're just trying to figure out how long this flange needs to be extended. I think where I kind of drew it just off the top of my head is gonna be pretty close. And we'll go ahead and leave the center line of the bolt hole right there where I have it drawn in. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and do this side. And I don't know if the other side's gonna be an identical match, but I think we're gonna go ahead and build two of these so they're the exact same and go from there. So we got our steel all mocked up, drawn out where I want it, but it's time to cut this thing, and I'm trying to decide on what we're gonna use to cut this with. What do you think?
How about a grinder?
I don't know, that might make too many sparks, and this is kind of thick.
Maybe a bandsaw?
A handheld porta band, I probably won't be able to hold it straight enough, and it won't cut deep enough. I know, I got just the thing. We got two pieces cut out. They're similar but not identical. So I went ahead and bolted them together. And we're gonna go ahead with a grinder now and make them identical, round off this edge, and drill a hole through both of them so that they're in the same exact spot. So we got these the same, and just to make it it's not so square on the front here, I already cut an edge off of this. The hole's gonna be here, and we're gonna go ahead and cut the edge off of this side too. We're gonna go ahead and grind that so it's rounded, and then take it over to the drill press. We got the pieces set up in the drill press. Let's go ahead and send it. We've got two identical pieces. Now let's go ahead and get these cleaned up. We're gonna grind down all the mill scale and get them welded to the spindles. Now that we have two identical pieces, we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna let Steffen clean these things up. We're gonna take the spindles off of the front of that axle, clean those up, and get these things mocked up and ready for welding. Steffen's getting ready to go ahead and clean these pieces up. I got the spindles back off the tractor, and while he's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and mark this to cut off this piece where the old steering link used to go to. So this piece sticks out the front of the tractor now, so we're gonna go ahead and cut that off. Steffen cleaned up these pieces. They're nice and shiny, ready for welding. And I went ahead and cut off a radius with the bandsaw of that steering arm that used to stick out. So now Steffen's gonna go ahead and round that off with the flap disc, make that smooth, make it look natural, and then he's going to clean up as much as he can on the top and bottom of these steering arms on these spindles. That way we can weld these to these, nice clean metal. So we got these pieces clean that we made, that we fabricated. We got them temporarily bolted to the steering spindle arm. Now, these tie rod ends are too long. So we're gonna have to chop them, cut them shorter. We're gonna use rod couplings for this. And we'll show you that when we get those. My wife had to run to the local hardware store to get a couple of rod couplings. I didn't have any here. So in the meantime, until she gets back, we're gonna run out to the barn and we're gonna grab some wheels and tires off of another John Deere 200 series parts tractor out there so that this thing has something to sit on. And those are gonna be the permanent rims for this anyways, that are gonna be getting those new Sun Fs coming up here soon. So let's grab a tractor, let's grab a trailer and head out to the barn. All right, we're out here in the barn. Steffen's taking off the wheels and tires from this parts tractor. And we need to hurry up because it's cold out here. Get back to that nice warm shop. We got the wheels and tires. Now let's get back to work. All right, so we just got back in the shop with the wheels and tires. My wife got back with the rod couplings. Now we're gonna go ahead and figure out how long the rods need to be, and we're gonna make them both exactly the same. Because on this one, the way I cut it, it's straight with this spindle arm. So that the side of this is straight with this, and we know that's how it needs to be orientated. On the one on the other side, it doesn't have a straight line. So we really don't know by eyeballing it or even taking measurements where that needs to be. So what we're gonna do is get the first side lined up. We're gonna measure the rod. We're gonna cut the rod to length, and then we're gonna make them both the exact same. And that way when we put the rods in, this will self-jig or self-orientate. After the rods are in, we're gonna go ahead and tack weld it, put the wheels on and everything, and see how it turns back and forth. So it looks like we want our rods to be roughly 10 5/8 inches center to center. And we want to have play both ways. All right, so we need the tie rods to be 10 5/8. These are 11 3/8. So I think if we cut out 1 1/4 or 1 3/8 out of these, we should have adjustability to make them toe in or toe out. All right, so we got our rod coupling laid out, and I got my section that I'm gonna cut out of this thing laid out. So next thing we're gonna do is chop this with the bandsaw, drill the threads out of this. We're gonna put it together and we're gonna tack weld it for now in case it's not gonna work. But it should work. Let's get to it. Sounds great. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and drill this with a hand drill, because if I try to put this in a vise in the drill press, it's just gonna wanna go through at a weird angle. This, I can chase it and I can feel it out. Got the finish cleaned off these rods. We got them cut down. We cut out that much. It's about 1 3/8 out of both of them. These are the rod couplings. The rod couplings are drilled out. We drilled a couple holes on each side in order to plug weld it. And now what I'm gonna do is mark so I know when these things are halfway into the rod coupling. And next what we're gonna do is get this lined up, and we're gonna weld it. All right, we're ready to go. Let's spot weld it and see what it looks like. We're gonna have to put stops so it can't go that far. All right, we got the tie rod ends installed, and now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up this bolt right here, because that's where it needs to be. All right, everything's mocked up. The tie rods are tight. Everything's where it's supposed to be. The bolts holding these extensions are tight. And if I hold the axle, I've got full lock both ways. We are gonna need to add a steering stop, because it can go so far that the heim joints start to touch. Well, maybe not. They don't touch. The steering wheel can go lock to lock without anything touching. And so we've got full lock, and we've got travel this way. Nothing binds up. So the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna get the welder over here, and I'm gonna tack weld these extensions to these steering arms. And then we're gonna take everything apart, take it over to the bench, weld everything up, put it back together. More in a minute. All right, here we go. We're ready to buzz this thing on, tack weld it. I've got my quality control assistant here. He's gonna watch over my shoulder and make sure that my welds are proper. You ready, Colt? Yeah. Here we go. Sounds great. always make sure to turn the gas on. I had the bottle off when I went and ate dinner, came back, and I was wondering why I had all that porosity in that last little spot. But here we go, we're gonna spot weld it. We'll fix it on the bench. Ready, Colt? Everything's disassembled off the tractor. We got the spindles back up here in the vise on the bench. I'm gonna go ahead and finish welding this thing out. Alright, the first spindle's completely welded. Steffen's over there cleaning it up and doing something with this actual spindle so we can slide the wheels on it. It had a little bit of surface rust. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and weld this one, but this is important. This is when the gas was off, and I noticed because it was really spattering, but you can see on this spot weld right here how much porosity and how nasty that was with no gas. I realized it right away, thankfully, and I'm going to go ahead and grind that out and then redo it. So I just figured we'd go ahead and leave these bolts in, extra strength, fill those holes, and I cut off the excess threads and just threw a little weld so that nut couldn't back off. But we're gonna go ahead and do that to this one too. These things are heavy duty. Let's go ahead and get them back on the tractor. Well, I gotta finish welding out the tie rods. All right, I got the ends welded. Now I'm gonna go ahead and plug weld where I drilled before. That's the finished product. That's the shortened tie rod. Plug welded and end welded on that rod coupling. So we're gonna go ahead and do the other one the same way. Get this thing put back together. Be back in a minute. Well guys, here it is, the finished product. We got the wheels and tires back on. Temporarily, these tires are gonna be on here until we put on the Sun Fs. But, as you can see, we got lock to lock. It definitely turns a lot sharper left, but I think all mowers do that. But it turns pretty sharp right too. But no binding. No binding when it's all the way turned. It does get close to that bump, to this bump right here, but it doesn't hit. What about the other side? Nope, same story. It doesn't hit, but it gets close. But we're gonna put steering stops. I'm gonna have to weld something to make the steering so it can't go all the way. So I'm gonna call that a win for tonight. We're gonna go ahead and let this thing down and see what it looks like. Oh wow, man, that looks nice. Here, take them hooks off. Let's see how she steers on the floor. Sweet. She could definitely turn sharper there. What you got for a wheelbase? What?
We got 48.5 inches.
48.5 inches, center to center, wheelbase. Nice. Alright guys, that's going to be a wrap for today's video. We're going to cut it off here. I thought I was going to do tires and everything today, but it's getting late. We're going to go ahead and call it a video on this front axle. I hope you guys found this interesting. Please, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and give me a like, comment, subscribe. Once again, my name's Jason. This is Steffen. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.